Hello, everyone, and welcome back into another edition of To The Point podcast. Everybody's doing well on this Thursday following the postmortem of the NHL season. It's over, and it's sad, honestly, that obviously you're excited and you're proud to see another champion crowned. But like when the NFL ends, like when, the NHL today, when baseball, basketball, what have you, it's a sad time for me, because I'm losing sports little by little. Thank God for the UFC coming up this weekend. Kind of get my mind off of having no hockey. We got the NFL training camps opening in less than 3 weeks. Yes, less than 3 weeks. And if you couldn't tell, I'm a little bit excited about that. You got baseball in full swing, but we are losing sports. The NBA playoffs, we're only guaranteed at least a potential 6 more games in this season. Then that's over. The Olympics, I like the Olympics. It's not something I adore. As I mentioned yesterday, it's because of the medal process and everything like that. But the NHL season is over. And for the second straight season, the Tampa Bay Lightning are Stanley Cup champions. And obviously they win the series 4-1, winning last night 1-0. There's so much to talk about today. Really, today's show's going to be loaded talking about the Tampa Bay Lightning, their future, some of the great moves that Julien Brisebois pulled off. Yes, Steve Yzerman was the architect getting a lot of these players, but you still have to add to win cups. And there was a player last night who I think was the best player on the ice, either team. And guess what? He wasn't a Steve Yzerman ad. That's just a little tease into that. But last night, a 1-0 victory. Tampa Bay Lightning play a really solid game. We saw frantic action in the second period where the Tampa Bay Lightning did take advantage. Obviously, you have a board battle where who comes out with the puck but Anthony Cirelli, a big game player. He gets the puck to McDonough. He's on the point. He finds Savard. Savard streaking in, throws the puck in front to Ross Colton, who Edmondson couldn't tie him up. He puts the puck into the back of the net. And from there, the Montreal Canadiens just couldn't beat Andrei Vasilevski. And that's where we're going to start. Andrei Vasilevski is the best goaltender in the world. There's not a debate anymore. He just went head-to-head with Carey Price, and he beat him. In 4 of the 5 games, he was the better goaltender. If anybody wants to have a debate with me, I'll gladly have you on the show. Because, is Tampa a better team? Yes. But Carey Price was less than perfect in this series. He was adequate at best. And was he great last night? Yes. But Andrei Vasilevski was better last night. And this is the thing. Carey Price has accolades. He's got a Hart Trophy. He's got Vezinas. But Andrei Vasilevski has 2 things that Carey Price will probably never win. And that's 2 Stanley Cups. Carey got to a Stanley Cup final for the first time, but Vasilevski is there for the second time. He's 25 years old. He's 2-0 in the Stanley Cup final. Now, he may never win a Stanley Cup again, but he's already done something that Carey Price has never done, and he's done it twice. But just beyond him being the best goaltender in the world, and it might be hard to hear for some people because he's a Russian goaltender and Carey Price is an elite guy and we love him. But Vasilevski played all season. Played well all season. Got nominated for the Vezina. Carey Price was injured and then he was sitting time out. Did he have a great postseason run? Yeah. But Vasilevski did it all year, then did it in the playoffs. But last night I'm watching the game and I'm thinking, when there's a huge block by Barclay Goodrow late in the game on Jeff Petrie, and I'm saying, who's going to win the Conn Smythe? And I'm sitting with family, and we're kind of having a little conversation about it. And, I think the clear favorite was Nikita Kucherov. Over 30 points, having a dominant postseason once again, putting himself in the conversation with Wayne Gretzky and Mario Lemieux when it comes to back-to-back postseasons and just the pure dominance that he put on display. But I was asked, and I said, Andrei Vasilevski is going to win the Conn Smythe. I just had this hunch. And Gary Bettman says it. about a minute and a half later that for the first time since 2012, a goaltender has won the Conn Smythe, which really shocked me. I know the winners of the Conn Smythe. Just thinking back, going through the years, obviously Crosby won it twice. You have Keith in there. You have Kane. You have Taves. You have Alex Ovechkin. You have Ryan O'Reilly. But there wasn't a goaltender in there. Obviously, I think the one that comes to mind is Jordan Binnington. He couldn't have been one. In those runs, Pittsburgh, Matt Murray was never played enough games to be in that conversation. And there's no way the NHL is going to give out a Conn Smythe that's not going to Sidney Crosby when he's in the final. But the first goaltender since Jonathan Quick, 9-year run without a goaltender winning the award, when goaltending is the most important position on the field. You think about the Conn Smythe winner, it's so rare to see a non-quarterback win Super Bowl MVP. This is the equivalent. Yes, it's based on more than one game, but if you're getting to the Stanley Cup final and winning it, your goaltender is playing at an elite level. And for arguably the two most important positions in pro sports, you can throw a pitcher in there for baseball. It's surprising and quite frankly alarming that the goaltenders aren't getting the love that they deserve. Quick wins it. Corey Crawford was never in that mix. Matt Murray was never in the mix. Braden Holtby didn't win it when the Capitals won. I mentioned Binnington. Vasilevski didn't win it last year. So it's a weird paradox where between the two sports, where in football, they almost have to get shot to not give the award to a quarterback. Giving Julian Edelman the Super Bowl MVP is not a sexy thing to do. A defensive player winning the award is not something they love doing. It has to be the quarterback. Eli Manning won 2 Super Bowl MVPs. He had good Super Bowls. He had late game drives, but he doesn't win those Super Bowls without the play of Michael Strahan or Justin Tuck or Jason Pierre-Paul. Von Miller won one when the Broncos won, but he won it because Peyton Manning was so much on his last legs that you couldn't give him the award. But in this case, to me, this was just because Andrei Vasilevski is just incredible. In his last 15 starts following a loss in the playoffs for the Tampa Bay Lightning, he is 15-0 with close to a .960 save percentage with 5 shutouts. That is domination, Holmes. That is just a clutch player. We talk about getting goals, being clutch. That is the definition of clutch. Your team has a loss. You're down. You gotta bounce back. Well, who does it start with? The goaltender, like the quarterback in the NFL. He's the quarterback of this team, and he sets the tone. 5 straight series the Tampa Bay Lightning have won, he's gotten a shutout in the closeout game. We talk about Braden Point being Mr. Clutch, which he is. But that is so clutch. It's not easy to close out a series. It's not easy to hit a big shot in the NBA with 20 seconds left, with a hand in your face, with all the pressure on you. But clutch players can do it. And Andrei Vasilevski is clearly proving to everyone that he's one of the most clutch players in the National Hockey League. The way he's done this is just out of this world. And him winning the Conn Smythe over Kucherov, I mean, we see after the game the great presser. If you haven't seen it yet, I really highly recommend that you do it. Nikita Kucherov talks about, last year he was nominated for the Vezina, didn't win it. Then he talks about this year how some guy in Vegas beat him for it. It's Marc-Andre Fleury. But I love how he approached it. He has personality. He had some flair. He's sticking up for his teammate, and you just won a cup, and you're not afraid to say anything. Because guess what? What's Fleury's comeback going to be? Oh, I was great. You didn't win. And who gives a shit about individual awards? There's something we've learned in these playoffs. Individual awards in the regular season mean nothing when it comes to getting playoff success. Absolutely nothing, because no Tampa Bay Lightning won an individual award. Vasilevski and Hedman were nominated, but they didn't win them. But they win the most important of all. They win the Stanley Cup for the second straight season. But it starts in net, and Vasilevski has just been the backbone of this team. He got drafted in the first round. They had high hopes. I remember him at the World Juniors. I thought, this guy's going to be good. I didn't think he'd be this good. I didn't think he could rise and be better than a Carey Price. But he's done that. He continues to prove it. He continues to back it up. And obviously the rest of his career, we'll see what happens. But right here, right now, he's the best player. I'll make the argument right now. Now, he won't be on number one on this list when TSN and Sportsnet make their announcements for their 50 best players list in October. But today, until they make that list, the best player in the NHL is Andrei Vasilevski. Better than Connor McDavid, better than Austin Matthews, better than you name it. And my reasoning for saying that is he did it in the playoffs. These guys who are in the top five, guess what? They don't even go far in the playoffs. They bounce before you even realize that they dropped the puck. Matthews and McDavid were so afterthought. Are they great players? Of course. But you have to give credence to playoff success. Nikita Kucherov, Vasilevski, Point, these guys rise in my rankings. Because, okay, you had 120 points in the regular season. That's fantastic. Good little sales pitch. It's sexy. It's a sexy thing. You know, it's easily sellable. But what about the playoffs? Oh, wait, you've been golfing for 2 months? While the guys who are ranked, in the 40s are winning it all. And Point jumps up, Vasilevski, of course, and Kucherov. But that's just another thing where, to me right now, Vasilevski is the best hockey player in the world. And nobody would agree with that. I'm sure that everybody listening is, beyond thinking I'm crazy. I'm not putting Connor McDavid or Austin Matthews above that guy. Because what have they done in the big moment? Shrink. Not be clutch. God, they can't win around those two, let alone even think about sniffing a cup. Vasilevski's like, hold my beer while I have another boat parade while you two dummies play Fortnite. Now, yes, that's harsh, but at the same time, it's just the facts of life. Good show. It's just what they do and what others don't. Vasilevski, Kucherov, these guys are winners. To this point, Matthews, McDavid, McKinnon, they aren't. They're fantastic talents, but they're not winners at this point. And that's who you'd have the top three players, I'm sure, to start next year. I'd be shocked if they're not. But people don't think about what happened like 3 months ago. Did McDavid win that? Oh, he blew by the defenseman in the Stanley Cup final. Oh, no, wait, no. That was in a practice in Arizona with Matthews. Right, yeah, that was just interleague session, but let's talk about that. I mentioned Kucherov, but again, the guy misses the entire season, and people can have their opinion and whatever they want to bitch and complain about Tampa manipulating the salary cap. Okay, every teams have been doing this forever. The Montreal Canadiens have done it. The Toronto Maple Leafs do it regularly. They had Joffrey Lupul on long-term IR when he could play. Was that not manipulating the salary cap? I don't know. Probably. Dougie Hamilton complained about it. We hear other players complain about it. Well, then go to an organization that's smart enough to know that you can do it. Don't be in Carolina where you're cheap as hell and you don't add a player because it's there. Kucherov had a legitimate surgery. He had hip surgery. It's not like he was pairing a broken nail. And they went through the regular season. They came in third. That's what they get to the playoffs. They ramp it up and they stomp on throats. That's what they do. And he's the center of that. It took him no time to be ready. He had 3 points in game 1 of the first round. It started in game 1 against Florida. He set the tone that night for what kind of playoffs he was going to have. The line of Kucherov, Point, and Palat was unbelievable. Now, they had their worst series in the Stanley Cup final. But what they did to get to that point was unbelievable. They just kept scoring. Point scored 9 straight games. Kucherov was getting pairs of points on those nights as well, being a dominant figure. He didn't score as many goals, but he was assisting on points, finding Palat, just being a menace on the power play, feeding Stamkos, finding guys open. And that line was the backbone of their offense. When the other lines were having an off night, you didn't worry if you were a Tampa Bay Lightning fan because you said, well, we still got Point and Kucherov who can go off at any second. And more often than not, they did. And the thing about Kucherov, what really separates him as an elite talent is his playoff, obviously his numbers in the playoffs, but just watch the way he plays the game. He's got a bite to him. He's not afraid to get in the corners. He'll get dirty. He'll throw a late punch. He'll muck it up. So will Brayden Point. He's not a big guy, but we see in these playoffs, he gets to the middle of the ice. How many players could be Brayden Point? So many. But it takes some of this heart, takes guts to go in there, take a cross check, not flop on the ice and just absorb it and move on to fight another day. But too many players are unwilling to do that. Like what? How could Mitch Marner not be that player? He easily could. He's more skilled than Brayden Point. He's faster than Brayden Point. But sometimes it's just about, okay, will you go there? Will you not take the shot from 25 feet away? Can I get to the middle of the ice? Even if there's no ice in these playoffs, we saw them play great defensive teams. Jacob Slave and Brett Pesce are better defensemen than what Montreal has. But he still found a way to sneak in behind them. He'd sneak in behind Mackenzie Weegar and Keith Yandel in Florida. He would do it against Ryan Pulock and Adam Pelech in Long Island. He just found a way to continue to be an effective player. And this series, they weren't dominant, but they put pressure. They got lots of zone time, and it made shifts for Shea Weber, Ben Sherratt, Edmondson, Petrie long and tiring because you had to chase them around, try to get the puck back. It was always we got to retreat. Then we got to try to just absorb their gut punch. And eventually you wear down. Eventually you get your opponent where if you don't have a haymaker, where Montreal did not have goal scoring to match the offensive firepower of Tampa, just as a team, you're eventually going to fall. And they did. And, the most underrated player on that line is Palat. How good this player is. He doesn't need to be the spotlight. He doesn't need to be in focus, so to speak. He's the Brandon Saad of Colorado, where this year you had McKinnon, Landeskog, and Rantanen play a lot together. But when they broke them up, who did they put McKinnon with? Brandon Saad. Brandon Saad's a veteran. He's sneaky good. He's a winner. And that's Palat. They're both not afraid to get involved physically. They're both got good shots. They both will muck it up, will be there when you need them to. And Palat was that guy. He's just a steady presence for this Tampa Bay Lightning team. He's only played in Tampa, and he brings it night in, night out. He's another veteran of this team that was just a force for every game he got on the ice. And he didn't have to be the center of attention. He got to get the advantage a lot because there's Kucherov and Point, where if you had an option of who to leave open, it's going to be Palat. But he's dangerous enough that if you leave him open, he'll make you pay down the stretch. So that line was a force all playoff long. But you go to the second line, it obviously scored the game-winning goal last night, where I think Stamkos played injured, but he's always injured, so I didn't really give him a pass. He didn't play all of last year. I think he had an okay playoffs, but it's a good moment for him last night to raise the cup where he can say he was part of it. He played every game. He didn't play 2 minutes and 35 seconds, en route to winning a Stanley Cup. But good moment for him. Anthony Cirelli, it continues to evolve. I think this guy is a bona fide number 2 center. He's established himself. The way he plays in big games, the way he battles for pucks, great shorthanded player. And he's just a guy that has a chip on his shoulder, but he's got winning intangibles. He was a winner in the OHL, when he got the Oshawa Generals to the Memorial Cup, getting the Game 7 overtime winner to get them there. Again, he wins the scrum last night along the boards, gets to McDonough, goes to Savard, Ross Colton in the back of the net. So look at those two guys. I think Cirelli's in Tampa for the long term. They want him. They signed him last summer as a RFA. Obviously, the Kucherov injury helped them do that. But he's a guy that continues. If I'm a team and Tampa's in cap hell, that's the guy I target. Because is he going to be a number 1 center in this league? No. But he's going to be an elite number 2 that can produce, that can play a checking line and can score big goals when you need him to. So there's that. Then there's the third line, where this line's really crazy. We'll start in the middle with Yanni Gourde, an undrafted free agent who had a great junior career, getting over 100 points in junior, but didn't get drafted. But the Tampa scouts, to their credit, saw something, and they didn't take him in the draft, but they said, come in here for a tryout. He goes to Tampa, works hard down in Syracuse, continues to get better, and comes to the NHL a few years ago. And last year he was on the team. He added something, but his game just 9 months later after winning a cup has evolved so much. His goal scoring ability, the way he's just not afraid of anybody. This guy will go into a corner. He'll get in a scrum with the biggest guy on the ice. He draws penalties, great penalty killer, scores the only goal in Game 7. Funny enough, they win Game 7 against the Islanders 1-0. They win Game 5 of the Stanley Cup Final 1-0. They beat Carolina 2-1. They can win any way you want. But Gourde is another guy that say you're having a slow start to a game, I throw him on the ice because he's going to bring guys into the fight with just his work ethic, enthusiasm, and just pure piss and vinegar. Last night, that third line was the best line for Tampa. They didn't score a goal, but they got damn close. And Gourde is he never stops. When he gets on the ice, defense have to hate playing against him because he's always in your face. You look around, think, okay, I can make an exit pass out of the zone. We'll be okay. No, Yanni Gourde's there. He's at least going to throw a hit or he's going to do something. And then we've seen in this series, Edmondson a couple times lost his patience because he just said, fuck you, Gourde. Give him a cross check. The ref would see it. It was after the puck's way down the ice. They're going to call it. And it's that kind of rat mentality where he's just never going to leave you alone. He's always going to continue to bring the pressure, always continue to be a factor, and guys just lose their patience. And not only that, not just that he's a nuisance, but he can deliver as well. He can just score goals. He can find guys on the ice. So from an undrafted free agent to such an important piece on this team, again, credit to Julien Brisebois and their scouting department to say, yeah, we didn't draft him. We didn't think he would, but that doesn't mean we're not going to scoop him up now. And to their credit, they did. And it's paid off huge dividends where he's had a great start to his career. He's got 2 Stanley Cups, to look back at. But then you look at the 2 wingers on that line. Now, at trade deadline time, it's often teams don't want to part with first-round picks. And I get that. You don't want to trade a first-round pick because who knows how you'll do in the playoffs. Maybe it becomes a lottery pick. Maybe you can make some noise and, it becomes a 16 pick and it's not, you didn't trade it and it's going to the team that you made a deal for. The guy's on an expiring contract. That looks like a terrible trade. But there's some deals where you trade a first round pick and it looks brilliant. And of course, there's 2 definitions there's really 3 definitions that on this roster, but I'm going to look at 2 right now. In 2020, March of 2020, just prior to the start of the pandemic, Julien Brisebois traded first-round picks plus for Blake Coleman and Barclay Goodrow. Blake Coleman was on the first line of New Jersey Devils. He had 25 goals at the time. He was playing the best hockey of his career, but he goes to Tampa, and you're not going to be the man. We've already outlined Kucherov, Point, Hedman, all their great players. So what does he do? He becomes a cog in the machine. He plays great defensively. He plays penalty kill minutes. He's a third line checker that's going up against the opponent's best line more often than not. And he does it without complaining. And that first round pick is great because who do you put him with? Another newcomer, another guy who was traded for a first round pick, another gamble. You had 2 cracks with him, but at the same time, it's a gamble because it's a first round pick. Barclay Goodrow was in San Jose having the best season of his career. And what happens? San Jose going to miss the playoffs. They say, okay, Tampa, we want a first round pick for Barclay. Okay, done. Julien Brisebois does it, puts him with Coleman. They establish a third line, and they start to become a huge part of this team. And the first line gets all the headway, but these guys just do what it takes to win. Last night, Barclay Goodrow blocks Jeff Petrie with about 20 seconds left. You could argue he saved the game. A huge block. He also had another one earlier in the period that hit the inside of his leg. Anything to win. And last night, Blake Coleman was the best player on the ice. He was like a rabid dog. He would not let Montreal have the puck. Weber got it. Sherratt, Edmondson, Petrie, it didn't matter. He was on them like stink on a monkey. It didn't matter what the situation. He was just there. He nearly scored a few times. Shorthanded, he had 3 shots last night, just shorthanded. And he was all over the ice. He was so noticeable. Sometimes you think, who had a good game tonight? It's not always about who scored, but who jumped off the screen and said, I've really noticed him tonight. That was Blake Coleman last night, winning board battles, beating guys to pucks, being aggressive. And he did that in spades last night. But you trade a first round pick for both these guys. You get 2 cracks with them to help win a Stanley Cup. What happens? Tampa wins 2. You get 2 cracks, and it's the ultimate best trade because you get both of these guys for 2 runs with the cup, and you win both years. And what happened their first year? Game 6, they beat Dallas 2-0 to close out the Stanley Cup final. Who scored that night? I wonder. Oh, yeah, Barclay Goodrow and Blake Coleman. So they had both goals to clinch the Stanley Cup for the Tampa Bay Lightning. Now, they're not going to be back, likely either of them next year. But for these teams like Tampa, it's about winning now. You're in your window. And Brisebois was aggressive. He went out there and not just said, okay, who's available, who's an expiring contract, which we see a lot of teams do. He goes, I'll pay more and get 2 cracks with these guys. And it paid off. The players have to buy in. That's part of it. But also look out there and say, okay, maybe it's not just an expiring contract. It's a team where they want a draft pick desperately because they're tanking. They know they're going to be bad again next year. They'll get more now. And, New Jersey, San Jose, they get the last pick of the first round in back-to-back years. But again, it's not, who cares about that pick now? If you're Tampa Bay, who gives a shit about first-round picks? Because you have the ultimate glory. You've won Lord Stanley Cup, and these guys helped you do it. That brings us to the 4th line. I'm going through the whole team because you know what? Because I was thinking about it today, about my lifetime. Was born in 1998, and I think of in my early life, I think of the Colorado Avalanche team was really, really good. Detroit Red Wings, the 2002 Detroit Red Wings really stand out to me as one of the best teams I've ever seen. I think the 2015 Blackhawks were pretty damn good. Obviously, LA was right up there with them. They had to get through LA. But, Tampa took 7 to get to the Islanders. But I look at this roster, it doesn't have a hole. There's no weakness to it. And I think it's the best team I've seen play. You see how many stars there are, how many Hall of Famers are on this roster? Vasilevski, Hedman, Kucherov, Point, if their career trajectories keep going this way, that's pretty good. You also got Ryan McDonough, who's pretty damn good as well. We'll get to him. But I think this is the best team I've seen play in my life. The Red Wings are close, really, really good as well. But these Tampa teams, they went back to back. And you can say, well, they played Montreal and Dallas in the Stanley Cup final. Well, Detroit played Carolina in 2002. It's not exactly murderers row. They swept them. You can only play who you can play. And I just look at this roster and say there's no holes, there's no weakness. They also have the best coach in the NHL right now. And I think it's the best team I've ever seen play. I watched a lot of hockey in my life. And again, I'm sure you could say Bossy's Islanders are better than them all time. I'm just saying in my 22, almost 23 years of life, I think the Tampa Bay Lightning are the best team that I've seen lace them up. And really, you look at, they had a David Savard. Ross Colton was added to their team. He was in the American League last year. They didn't make many changes to this roster. It's practically the same. And they ran it back again. But that adds to the fourth line where Tampa was in a cap crunch. Kucherov obviously needed surgery. That helped them. But they were trying to get rid of Tyler Johnson last year. And he was really their best player in the 2015 Cup run where they fell to the Chicago Blackhawks. But he was waived a number of times. They tried to get Detroit to claim him. They would not do it. So they're kind of stuck with him. But he played all year, third to fourth line role. He embraced it. But Tyler Johnson is much better than a fourth line center. But his contract makes it very difficult for Tampa to play him. But he's still a really effective player. He's still got a good shot. And he's got that dog in him. Like a Yanni Gourde. He's always got something to prove. So you have him. They will never have him again. I think Tampa will make arrangements that Seattle takes him in the expansion draft in a little over a week. But nevertheless, he's a big part of this team, and he helps you win another cup. I mentioned Ross Colton. He played on the second line last night, but he was on the fourth line most of the playoffs till Alex Killorn was injured with a broken fibula, who he tried to get back into the series, which is just crazy. He had a rod put in his broken leg, but doctors wouldn't clear him. But what a warrior he is. Matthew Joseph, former St. John Sea Dog, was a black ace last year. Like, never played a game. Didn't play a game in the playoffs, just sat there, did warm-up game after game, but didn't get a crack. This year, plays in the first round, then they insert Colton. He sits a while, but then Killorn gets hurt and gets his opportunity to play in the Stanley Cup final. Gets an assist on the big Pat Maroon goal in Game 4. But this guy's a high draft pick. He's got a lot of promise, and he looks like a kid that can really play in the NHL. So they have him as a youngster on their fourth line playing really well. So he wins his second cup in as many years, and he continues to be better. He's on a cheap contract, which bodes well for Tampa long term. And to round out the forwards, the most unlikely story of them all, we have the big rig, a.k.a. Pat Maroon. The guy who, he says it himself, he's not in the best shape. He's a big dude. He's a great team player, good in the room, but he's not your prototypical, I'm going to go do wind sprints after practice. I'm not going to do the extra work, but he's just a guy that's been a great teammate. He's a big game player because he will score big goals. Like we saw in Game 4 again in the Stanley Cup final, like we saw him score a double overtime winner against the Dallas Stars in the second round of the 2019 Cup run with St. Louis. But he wins his third cup in as many years. Obviously, winning in 2019 with St. Louis in his hometown, huge accomplishment. They don't want to bring him back. They don't even offer him a contract. So he goes to Tampa for $900,000. Then they go on the magical run in the bubble. They win the Stanley Cup 2 in a row. Then this year he signs another deal to come back. He loves it in Tampa. And they go back again and they win the Stanley Cup. 3 cups in 3 seasons for Pat Maroon. We got Mike Bossy wins 4 in a row, but Pat Maroon is the next guy. He's the next dynasty. You had the Oilers in there and the Islanders, but the next dynasty is Pat Maroon, not Sidney Crosby, not McDavid, not Alex Ovechkin. It's Pat Maroon. Yes, he's a 4th-line player, and he's not as important as Crosby or these guys to winning, but it doesn't change the fact that the guy's just a winner. 3 cups in as many years, and he's got the same amount of cups now as Sidney Crosby. He's got 3 Stanley Cups, which is just crazy. He's 3-0 in the Stanley Cup Finals. Crosby 3-1. Now, I'm not making an argument he's better than Sidney Crosby. I'm just saying, look at that career. He's a 4th-line guy. He always will be. But he can look back and say, I won 3 straight Stanley Cups. Look, you're going to look back at his career and be like, this guy's just a winner. St. Louis didn't offer him a contract. They've been going downhill since. Tampa gets him. They've been pressing forever. They make another few critical moves. And what happens to them? They go and win back-to-back Stanley Cups. But congrats to the Big Rig. He's a favorite of mine. To win 2 straight Stanley Cups is quite the achievement. And he's been such a good teammate, such a good guy to the league. He's got that personality, and I can't wait to see what kind of antics he'll be up to during the Stanley Cup parade, which I assume will either be tomorrow or Saturday in Tampa Bay. That brings us to the defense corps. And let's start with the guy who's been nominated for the Norris Trophy 5 straight seasons, and that's Victor Hedman. Now, I don't think Victor Hedman was as good this postseason as he was last year. Obviously, last year he won the Conn Smythe Trophy, was clear-cut the best player in the playoffs. He might be battling an injury, but he still played well down the stretch. I think in the last few games of the Stanley Cup Final, he was really clutch, played a lot of key minutes where he had to be a shutdown guy, eliminate Suzuki and Josh Anderson, who were really pressing, especially in Game 5, where I think Suzuki was Montreal's best forward. And other than him and Anderson, they really didn't have anybody who jumped off the page to me. But Hedman put up points when he needed to. He was a great power play guy for Tampa. He gets his shot through, which is something that he hits the net, unlike Shea Weber. But he's just steady Eddie back there. He's always ready. He's always in position. And he was just a force for the Tampa Bay Lightning. And you look at their defense and how they won. They love big guys who just can eat minutes. Victor Hedman, of course, can do that. He can play 30 minutes a night. Former 2nd overall pick who took some time to develop, but now he's clearly the best defenseman in the NHL. And you could say it's not even close. I think Seth Jones is number 2. Seth Jones didn't exactly have a great year in Columbus. Then you look at Ryan McDonagh, who's a consummate professional, was a great leader in New York. They did get to a cup final in 2014, but he never won it. And another thing Julien Brisebois saw, okay, Ryan McDonagh's available. I can have a couple cracks, maybe re-sign him. This guy's a number 1 defenseman that I can add to my roster where I already have the best defenseman in the league. But I can add a Ryan McDonagh who's going to add something different. Hedman's going to be a scorer as well as play really good defensively. But McDonough's the guy you trust the most on the ice when the going gets tough, in my opinion. He's just always in the right position. He's ready for anything you throw at him. He'll play penalty kill. He'll go up against the top line, and he relishes the opportunity. He's just that kind of guy. And to me, in these playoffs, he was the best defenseman on the Tampa Bay Lightning. He was better than Victor Hedman. He was better than Chernak, than Sergachev. He's always in the right position. This sounds so simple, but he makes quick exit passes out of the zone. There's no confusion. There's no mess up. McDonagh just makes the correct play. He contributed offensively when he had to, but he was just a great defensive defenseman where you needed a shift to kind of settle things down. You put Ryan McDonagh out there with anybody. Could be Sergachev, could be Chernak, could be David Savard, as we saw in the game-winning goal. It did not matter. What they did do, as I said, McDonagh, Hedman, in close games down the stretch, we're going, you're on, then you're on. And you can play with anybody. It can be Chernak, it can be Savard, it can be Sergachev. We're going to we're going to move you guys around and to make sure that we have each of you on the ice. But having McDonough gave Tampa that opportunity. You love Cernak, you love Sergachev, but you trust them more when you have that steady veteran defenseman that is not going to, make a bad pinch. He's going to be in good position. He's ready for the opportunity. And it also gives more calm and confidence to these younger defensemen in the bigger moments. But, Eric Cernak, when he was drafted, I don't think Tampa thought he'd be this good, but he is that good. He's starting to add an offense. He's never going to be a great offensive defenseman. He scored 1 goal in these playoffs. He's got 1 goal in, I think, 50-plus Stanley Cup playoff games. But he's so physical. And when guys try to get around him, it's like he sucks them into his belly because they can't get around him. And you try to get through him. He's such a big man that life is so difficult for these players to even maneuver. Where they try to get around him, and it's just Cernak saying, okay, no, I built a wall. My name's Eric. I built a wall and you can't get through it. I'm not talking about Eric Trump. He's just that presence where he's in the right position. He's going to play with an offensive guy, and they'll feel good with Cernak on the ice as well because he's going to be there. But what I do like about him is he's not afraid. He'll pinch. He'll keep the puck in. You might not, be the best offensively gifted when it comes to getting scoring opportunities, but he keeps the puck in. He's not afraid of those times when he gets the puck, he doesn't throw it away. He's getting better and better year over year. And the same can be said for Mikhail Sergachev. Obviously, that's a tough blow for Montreal. They're in the positive side of this in the series against Vegas, where they traded Max Pacioretty, their captain at the time, for Nick Suzuki. Now, Suzuki is a center that Vegas desperately could have needed in that series. And Suzuki looks like a guy who's going to be a star. I think he's going to be the next Patrice Bergeron, Sean Couturier type. I don't worry about him upcoming. I just think he's a star. He's not going to be Matthews, McDavid point level, but that's not his style of play. That's not what Montreal is going to need him to be. But you just look at Sergachev in the opposite. He gets traded from Montreal to Tampa Bay for Jonathan Drouin, straight up. And Drouin obviously was drafted third overall. Was just a big guy that they loved, but he never in Montreal. He's never turned into anything. He hasn't done it in the playoffs. He hasn't done it in the regular season. He's been a mess, Jonathan Drouin. Sergachev, they get Tampa Bay. It took a little bit of time, but he's developing into quickly a really elite defenseman on a team full of elite defensemen. But if they lose a McDonough, if they lose a Cernak, Sergachev, you feel so comfortable with him that he's going to be dominant. He's going to be ready to play. He's going to be ready in the big moments. Jonathan Drouin was so not ready for the moment that he couldn't even play in these playoffs due to personal reasons. And that's such a loaded term because you can't really question anybody because it's personal. And now that Tuukka Rask has started that shitstorm, well, now it's family and all this, and I'll question it because I think the guy was mailing it in before. Now he's just using personal reasons to say, well, that's why I wasn't playing. I didn't play in the playoffs. That's why my play before that stunk. So, but that trade looks terrible for Montreal where they could have used Sergachev. Obviously, their defenseman played valiantly. But you look at their bottom pair. It was either Gustafsson and John Merrill. Gustafsson is virtually useless when it comes to playing defense. He's only out there for the power play, and the power play stunk. So that means he's an ineffective player. John Merrill, okay, whatever. Kulak was playing later in the series. He's just a guy that I think he has ADHD, so he can't sit still. Every time it screams, just play back, just play good defensively. Montreal does not want you to get burnt here. He had to get burnt every time. And he was really an erratic player in these playoffs when he got an opportunity. And having a guy like Sergachev, you're not getting that. He's going to make the smart decision with the puck in the moment. But you didn't get that from a guy like Brett Kulak. Now, Romanoff, he always change his name. I think he's going to be a really good player in the NHL. I think he played far too little games in this postseason. But I think he's going to be a star. Like he even showed some signs of that in the Stanley Cup final where he hadn't played in a month and he comes in and plays some pretty good hockey when he got opportunities. So that's the Tampa roster. I'll add Jan Ruda, but he's not. Oh, and David Savard, who they acquired at the trade deadline. You get a team that's loaded. Apparently, they're manipulating the cap. But how about other GMs? How about you do something? David Savard was the best defenseman available at the trade deadline, and you let the Stanley Cup champions go get him? Shame on you. That's not Tampa's fault. How about make a better offer? There's no way a GM should say, you got to call me back because whatever Tampa's offering, I will match it. I will do better than what they're doing. Because I cannot let that team that's already the favorite, already looks so damn good, getting Kucherov back, get David Savard, the best defenseman available, at the trade deadline. No. David Savard's got to be on my team, and more important than that, not on theirs. But yet another failure from GMs around the NHL who just let it happen. He was great he struggled to start his career in Tampa, but what happens at the end of the rainbow? He wins a Stanley Cup, and that's all you can ask for, being on Columbus with the second worst record in the NHL this year. You get traded to Tampa, you win a cup. I'm sure Seth Jones would have taken that red carpet ride as well if it was available to him. So that's it. I mean, Tampa, like I said, they're one of the best teams I've ever seen, and maybe the best. And they were just too much for Montreal. They're too much for Carolina, too much for the Islanders, too much for Florida. They didn't have an easy run of the playoffs, but they battled through it, and their stars played big boy hockey. Now, you win 2 in a row. And obviously, the narrative to start next year will be, well, can you go 3 in a row? But it's going to be much more difficult, and there's a couple of reasons for that. In a little over a week, like I said, we're going to have the expansion draft where the Tampa Bay Lightning are going to lose a player. So you're automatically losing a guy from the Stanley Cup roster. Now, I assume they're going to try to get Seattle to take Tyler Johnson in that contract. He makes over $5 million. But to get Seattle to do that, you're going to have to throw somebody else in the deal. Maybe it's Alex Killorn. Maybe it's Matthew Joseph. But it's going to be somebody on that roster that you're going to have to part with. And maybe it's a defenseman. And maybe it's a defenseman you really like, and Seattle will take him. But you're going to lose a piece on your team, likely 2, because it's going to have to be one of those scenarios where Vegas took advantage of it. Tampa has no choice. They have 14 players signed next season at this point right now, and they're at $89 million. The salary cap is $80 million. So they need to shed salary. Losing Johnson, losing Killorn would do a lot of good in getting them closer, getting back to the $80 million. They'll still have to shed some salary, but losing those 2 big contracts would help them a lot. So I could see that being the scenario in a couple weeks. Also, Blake Coleman, Barclay, Goodrow are unrestricted free agents. I think you look at the both of them, you just won back-to-back Stanley Cups. Your value is never going to be higher. Never going to be higher. I think Blake Coleman's going to be a guy that people want in the trade deadline market. In the free agent market, where he's a player that can show he can be a first liner on a bad team. He can be a third liner on a Stanley Cup team. I'd say he's somewhere in the middle. I think he could be a 25 goal scorer and still be a really effective defensive player, be a guy who's a leader and part of a key cog in the machine. So likely his end game is somewhere in the middle there. I see teams like Toronto really taking a look at Blake Coleman if they can afford him. I think, the team he just beat, the Montreal Canadiens, they need more scoring. They need more scoring. And adding a guy like Coleman would do them a lot of good. Those are 2 Canadian teams. I think of the Florida Panthers. We saw Vladimir Tarasenko requested a trade last night. I think he would be a guy that Florida will take a run at, depending on his salary. He's got 2 years left. If St. Louis ate a bit of that salary, I'm sure Tarasenko would love to go to Florida. Russians love the sun and the heat. He get to play with his countryman Bobrovsky. So there's a lot of positives in Florida. But, where does Blake Coleman go? Barclay, Goodrow, what kind of value does he have on the open market? I think these guys should have big ones, a big market, because you just won a Stanley Cup. You battle through the grind. You block shots. You do what it takes when the game's on the line. and you have playoff experience that's invaluable. It's not just playoff experience getting there, getting deep into the playoffs and losing. It's getting deep into the playoffs and winning games. And signing these guys right now after cup runs is not like signing a Joe Thornton or a Patrick Marleau, who's an old veteran. You're signing a guy in the prime of their career who have more confidence right now than they ever will, ever. They just won 2 straight Stanley Cups. They're also likely going to lose David Savard. Again, he's played himself. I think he's going to want a big contract with term on it. Tampa just simply can't afford it, so he'll be elsewhere. Another key piece gone. But how do they add to that? Does Luke Schenn jump into the lineup, who's been really their spare defenseman the past 2 seasons? For the Tampa Bay Lightning, we've seen him play a little bit in the playoffs for Savard, for Jan Ruda for a few games. So he's always there. I could see Tampa bringing him back on another 1-year contract if he wants to. So, those are big pieces. And again, I still think you're gonna have to lose another guy. So what happens? Do they get another? Does Hedman have off-season surgery and he goes on long-term injured reserve? I think that could happen, depending on. You said that Kucherov played with a fractured rib in the playoffs. I could see a long-term. What is Stamkos's health status? It was rumored in October when the season ended that Tampa tried to get Hedman to approve a trade and he would not waive his no-move clause. Now, I assume that got very contentious and awkward, but if Tampa had their druthers, I think they would, in a perfect world, they would deal Steven Stamkos and keep some of the guys I just named, because Coleman, Killorn, they're more valuable right now than Stamkos is, in my opinion. I think he's had so many injuries rob his career. But with these injuries, I think he's going to wear down even quicker. And in a few years, he's going to be making that big money, and he'll be an anchor more than a guy that's helping Tampa, potentially get to and win a 3rd straight Stanley Cup. So this team's going to change. But for now, what they can do, enjoy the parade, enjoy winning back-to-back. Nobody can take that from you. And for the guys that are in that elite company when it comes to being superstars in this league, rejoice, get your names out there, continue to show, have great personality like Kucherov. And for Braden Point, continue just to be an underrated stud who will get overlooked by every pundit out there. But when you get back to the playoffs, you'll show everybody just what you're made of. Now, quickly looking at the other side of the coin, obviously the Montreal Canadiens had a great magical run where they're down 3-1 to the Toronto Maple Leafs in the opening round. It looks like curtains. Every Toronto Maple Leaf fan was doing jumping jacks and thinking, okay, Montreal's out. Let's go to the second round. Maybe we can make a run here. But Montreal wins Game 5 in overtime. They win Game 6 in overtime. They come back, win the series in 7. They sweep the Winnipeg Jets. Then they battle tooth and nail with Vegas, beat them in 6 after fantastic play from the defense, great play from Philip Danault, and balanced scoring throughout the lineup. But they run into the buzzsaw that is Tampa in the Stanley Cup final. There's no shame in that. Charles Barclay said in 1993, after his Phoenix Suns lost to Michael Jordan, the Chicago Bulls, there's no shame losing to Mike. And that's the same exact sentiment here. For the Montreal Canadiens, there's no shame in losing to the Tampa Bay Lightning because the Tampa Bay Lightning are just better than the Montreal Canadiens. You could argue the Montreal Canadiens shouldn't be here. I'm not going to make that argument because you worked your ass to get here. I don't care who has more talent. I don't care who on paper, which is so stupid, looks better than this team. On paper, guess what? You can look at the paper, you can look at their scorecard when they're golfing. But for Montreal, what happens? They got some decisions to make as well. Do they lose Jake Allen? I could see Seattle taking Jake Allen in the expansion draft. I think that would be really smart. He's turned his career around the past number of seasons. He played some really good hockey this year when Carey Price was out, and he would be a good guy to start your franchise with, getting a tandem goaltending situation in Seattle. So does Jake Allen depart? Philip Danault is an unrestricted free agent. He turned down a $5 million a year offer from, I think, 5x5 early this year. And he had a fantastic postseason run. And I think he's made up some of that money that he said no to. But there's also the case that, yeah, he's great defensively, which he is, but he's so limited offensively that you're like, well, what's he really going to give me game in, game out? And that's a fair question. How many goals is he going to score next season? He had 5 this year in 56 games. That screams 10 goals next year for Montreal. They already struggled to score. Obviously, you're going to have Cole Caulfield for a long period of time, but he's going to play his first full season. How does he look? I think he kind of ran out of gas in the Stanley Cup final. It really became less and less noticeable. He was playing with Anderson and Suzuki, but really it was like those two were playing together, and Caulfield was out there on spring break. So how does he look in the next season? Can they upgrade their defense? The likes of Merrill, Kulak, like I mentioned, Gustafsson, those guys aren't the answer. Could you add a David Savard, who just defeated you? He's from the Montreal area. Would he want to go to Montreal? That would be a good add on their defense. He'd be another big guy. But, Sherratt's been great. Weber's stayed healthy. David Savard would be a great add to this team. I'm not sure if he's interested in coming back to Montreal, but that would be intriguing. And I also think, and a story that I think will gain some momentum is, what happens with Jesperi Kotkaniemi? He was having a great postseason, then you healthy scratch him games 4 and 5 of the Stanley Cup final. This team has not liked him since they drafted him 3rd overall. They've not done what's best for his development, and I worry for him long term. I think it would be nice to see him get a change of scenery. And I do think Montreal is a good organization where Dominic Ducharme will obviously return as head coach, get that interim tag removed. Marc Bergevin will remain as general manager. But what they've done with Kotkaniemi, force feed him early in his career, then put him in the minors, then kind of ridicule him in the media, and now healthy scratch him in the Stanley Cup final and really put that burden on him to say, okay, you're the one that's costing us here. That's not how you treat a young kid. He's your 3rd overall pick. You do whatever you can to help this guy succeed. It's imperative that he does. And I'm not saying he's going to demand a trade. I think Montreal could look for a trade just because they're sick of him. But I wouldn't want to lose KK. I'm really high on this guy. I think he's a really, really good player. And I'm not saying he's going to be a superstar, but can he be that second line center? Can he be an Anthony Cirelli in this league? I think he can. I think he can be that guy, 60 to 65 point of center. I think he can be a Ryan Nugent-Hopkins, but play the center ice position like, Nugent-Hopkins plays the wing in Edmonton. I think he can have that type of career. But maybe Montreal's not going to give him that opportunity because every time he makes one mistake, he gets it's not a slap on the wrist. It's like he gets thrown in the hole in prison where they don't give him the second chance. And I just don't think they're running that the correct way. This guy has talent. He can be confident, but you're killing his confidence by putting him in the presser every time he makes a little mistake. So how does Bergevin, how does Dominic Ducharme feel about Kotkaniemi being on the roster to start next season? But credit to Montreal, like I said, you got to the Stanley Cup final, but it stings because you got all the way there, you didn't win. We saw Shea Weber after the game really, being consoled by his teammates because he's a veteran. He'll likely never get back to a Stanley Cup final. He didn't get to go to the Stanley Cup final with Nashville in 2016. He was traded by then. So he missed out on that opportunity. But he gets there this year. It's a wear-out playoffs where he played a ton of minutes, played some of the best hockey he's played in 4 to 5 years. He's really had trouble staying on the ice, being injured all the time. But we see what happens where it falls short for Montreal. They didn't have the firepower to compete with Tampa. And now where do we go from here? But Montreal will be in the mix. Obviously, we're going back to the old divisional format, so they're going to be much more tough. They got Tampa in their division. They got Toronto. They got Ottawa, who continues to improve. Boston, who is no slouch. So will they pull a 1993? Obviously, 1993 was different with them winning the Cup, but that year they made the playoffs. In 1994, they missed the playoffs. I think that's a distinct possibility. I really like this roster. I'm interested to see what they do this offseason. Bergevin was really aggressive last offseason, getting the likes of Josh Anderson, which is a big addition to parting with Max Domi, getting Yoel Armia, adding Corey Perry to this roster. So there can be moves, but it's likely not going to be some, they added Jake Allen. It's likely not going to be big money because they've already used up a lot of their cap room. So where do they go from here? But as we head into the offseason, obviously it's a time of optimism. You hear rumors all the time. Tarasenko wants out. There's a rumor that Taylor Hall and the Toronto Maple Leafs are linked. Right. They need another player that's so similar to what they have already. There was news today. Travis Dermott re-signed in Toronto for 2 years at $1.5 million. I think that trade mostly is because I think Seattle may take him in the expansion draft. A guy needs to be under contract in order to be eligible to be taken in the expansion draft. So clearly they did that for that purpose. I believe maybe they won't take it. If I'm Toronto, I'm pleading with Seattle and Ron Francis, please take Alex Kerfoot and his $3.5 million. That's like a cinder block dragging us down. But maybe Travis Dermott with 2 years is a guy that they like. They'll take off Toronto's books and he'll be their target. But we got 21st, we got the expansion draft. We got the NHL draft. In between that, then we have July 28th, the free agent frenzy will begin, where every free agent will be on the board. Moving forward, I need to keep doing deep dives into who's available, who's not. Obviously, it's been a while since I looked at those boards, but awesome predictions coming up on the podcast. We'll talk about different players that are free agents, where their best fit would be, potential trades involving Seth Jones, Duncan Keith. It sounds like he's working out a deal to go to the Edmonton Oilers. In return, Caleb Jones, Seth's brother, may be going to Chicago. So does Stan Bowman pull that one off, get another feather in his cap, add another superstar to their mix? We'll see. But nothing else today. Just the Stanley Cup final. There's so much to talk about when it comes to this Tampa Bay Lightning team, what they accomplished the past couple of years. The roster will be different, but they'll have the same stars, and we'll see what they can do next year as they go for 3 in a row. But as always, thank you everybody for tuning in. Hope you guys enjoyed it. The NHL talk's not going away, like I said, but another season in the books. And congratulations to the Tampa Bay Lightning, and have a great time at the parade because you guys deserve it. But as always, everybody, thank you so much for listening. Continue to tune in. Feel free to leave some messages in the comments. If you hate anything I say today, we can have a little discussion, go back and forth. I love the interaction with all of you. So have a great night, everybody, and we'll talk soon.